So we had that Nintendo Direct yesterday, and in that event, there was a certain announcement that was definitely out of left field. Like, no one saw this coming. And, when I saw this at first, I said, it's interesting. And then I looked at it a bit more because, of course, a lot of details come out after Nintendo does their presentation, especially with pricing and limitations of some of these products. But part of this was that limitation that I noticed, and it made me realize, wait, this could open the door to a system people have been calling for to go into NSO for quite some time. And that's what we're going to look at here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. So definitely some speculative stuff here when it comes to NSO, but just something I thought was kind of interesting that I wanted to take a look at. So this is the Virtual Boy. And again, this is left field, right? Like, they show us the Virtual Boy, and it was funny. I'm going, oh, that's okay. That's kind of cool. But then they kept going, and they're like, oh, no. We're going to sell you the shell of a Virtual Boy, and your Switch 1 or Switch 2 will go in it, and it will reenact the Virtual Boy experience. Well, maybe. I mean, I think the screen's probably going to be a bit better. It's hard to be worse than what we had with the Virtual Boy screen, especially now if you buy one. These things are very expensive. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. If you try to find it in the box, it's like $600 or $700. And the situation with them now is each eye you're rolling the dice when it comes to the viewing of either side that gives that stereoscopic effect. Most of the time, one or the other, left or right eye, will go out on you, and then you just lose the 3D effect completely. But the point here is they do have an accessory at $100. So it's not cheap. It falls more in line with their controllers, I guess, if you think about it that way, so we saw $65 for the GameCube one. This is still more expensive, but they have the cheaper option. They didn't say it, but it's the Labo cardboard VR set that's just Virtual Boy themed now. I mean, look, hey, Labo lives on. I don't know how many people are going to be buying either of these, to be honest, because Virtual Boy itself is already pretty niche. And now you're going, hey, you need this. And here's the thing that was very interesting to me. You do need this. You need one or the other. All right. Like, you can't play this in docked mode. That stuck out to me a bit. If you scroll down here, there is indeed fine print that says this will not function without this system. It's down here. Again, very, very small right here. Virtual Boy for Switch 2, Switch, Virtual Boy cardboard model for Switch 2 are required to play Virtual Boy Nintendo Classics collection of games. As in, it doesn't work in docked mode, which is a little interesting to me because I figured, as we've seen with NSO, these games all work in handheld or docked play because the nature of the Switch or the Switch 2 is that it's a hybrid system, and Nintendo typically has to account for this across the board. So, for example, they say the Switch Lite is just not compatible, which is how it's kind of been for Labo anyway. Labo has never supported Switch Lite and really didn't support the Switch OLED much at all. Here, though, it does, and I guess those are some of the changes they made for the cardboard side is, we'll make it so that it does also fit the Switch OLED screen, if you remember, larger than the original Switch or the Switch Lite screen. So when I saw that, I said, interesting. They're kind of breaking away from that idea. And really, if you look at this, it's going to be very much sectioned off as to who is even going to be using the Virtual Boy app in NSO. But I guess in Nintendo's mind, they want you to have the true experience for Virtual Boy, for better or worse, headaches and all. It's all going to be there for you. But they obviously could have made it work in dock mode because we have Virtual Boy emulation and it works fine without the 3D. I mean, fine is relative. The games themselves did still have to work in this environment, so they're kind of simplistic, sure, but they do function. If you fire up an emulator now, you can play it. I mean, there's a really good one for the 3DS that uses that stereoscopic 3D, but you can turn it off and it's fine. So I was a little surprised at that, but when I started thinking about it more, I go, okay, Nintendo is going down this path to where it doesn't have to work docked for whatever reason here with the Virtual Boy. Would that extend to a system that people have been asking for quite some time? And I've kind of had a hard time figuring out how Nintendo would even accomplish it in docked mode. I can picture the Virtual Boy. The DS is a little more difficult, though, to figure out. We had it with the Wii U, and the benefit of the Wii U is it had that the tablet. So you had that second screen experience that would go ahead and support the bottom screen, the touch screen on the DS. You don't really have that at all for the Switch or the Switch 2. Some have speculated on a 2-screen design where you'd be able to buy a separate screen, attach it, and there you go, you're set up that way. Some have wondered if Nintendo would allow you to sync up your smartphone and you can use that as the bottom screen. And a lot of this is trying to figure out how to take the DS 2-screen experience and mold it to the Switch. But the Switch can do it already in a certain way. All right, but it would just about eliminate docked mode. So that would sort of be in this, as they call it, tape mode for the Switch. And this is something that we had with multiple grips. Here's the flip grip, just as an example, where it lets your Switch just be in that vertical orientation. And the reason I say this works is because, I mean, if you look at it, it's as if you took a DS and just open it all the way up and you'd have both screens stacked on top of each other here. There's a handheld system that I got in, one of those emulation handhelds that are pretty cheap, but it uses a form factor for a screen where it's kind of in this portrait mode. And it works pretty well in the sense that you can cut it in half and then have 2 screens, one on top and one on bottom, and the bottom screen is touch. And it works fine for DS games. So I'm picturing this where it would just be in handheld mode for DS, but that's also kind of how the DS has always been. It's a handheld system. So if you take your Switch 2 or your Switch OLED or your Switch 1, turn it sideways like this, yeah, you'd be able to play DS games, I assume, without too much issue. But again, the Switch Lite would be left out. Although it keeps getting left out of these things. It's being left out of the Virtual Boy now as it is. And Nintendo's played around with this already. Like the 2DS, the thing that's funny is people look at this as it being 2 screens stacked on top of each other. It's actually just one big screen, really, that they have in here. There's like a metal bracing that goes across the middle when you take this apart. But no, it is really just one screen. And in fact, this is sort of a device in that portrait or that tape mode already, just with plastic around it. And the other thing with the DS that I was trying to figure out how Nintendo would tackle it is they like to sell accessories with these NSO releases. I mean, we're getting 2 with the Virtual Boy. We're getting the Virtual Boy itself, the shell, and we're getting some cardboard that they'll ship to you and more cardboard. But the idea being they can continue to sell stuff, yes, to NSO only members, but just be able to make more money on top of that NSO subscription. And it's worked for them just about every time. People buy the GameCube controllers, the N64 controllers, Super Nintendo. And I think the way they could go about it is sort of do another controller, but almost in the style like this, where it's sort of this flip grip setup. And I guess your Joy-Cons would just go on the side and you'd be set up and good to go. The thing that would be interesting is if they made it so that it also had a stylus that sat into the back here and you would take out and use on the front screen right here where they split it in half. I do also want to point out that it is possible to play DS games rather than one screen on top of the other stacked sort of in that vertical configuration. You could have them side by side and the Switch or Switch 2 just be in the standard landscape mode with the Joy-Cons on either side of the Switch system. Just the way we're seeing Nintendo approach the Virtual Boy, which is them just saying it's gotta be almost one-to-one like the original or nothing at all, makes me wonder if they would approach it in a similar fashion with some kind of accessory that they'd sell you for the DS using the Switch 1 or 2 in handheld mode. I guess there's also the potential for gyro controls to where you use a Joy-Con and pointer controls, so you could simulate the touch controls, say, on a display in docked mode. I'm just not really sure how great of an experience that would be across the board. And that's something I've noticed Nintendo with a lot of these NSO releases. They don't exactly go crazy trying to fix everything up to make it fit. This is mostly them dropping it into different emulators, and then that's sort of it. And I'll admit, maybe I am connecting dots that aren't there. Maybe there's a bit of a reach, but just something about that, seeing the Virtual Boy pop up for NSO, and it doesn't work in dock mode. It's only a handheld setup for the Switch 1 and Switch 2, no Switch Lite being involved. It made me realize that Nintendo is willing to do some limitations for NSO to get, I guess, as true to the experience as it was back then with something like the Virtual Boy. So why wouldn't they make a DS Lite release for NSO that would be incredibly popular by, yes, walling off some parts like a docked mode that maybe they're having a hard time figuring out, so that they can also sell an attachment that would make it work in handheld mode. I guess the only thing you're really missing is the idea of that clamshell design, but the Switch in general and the Switch 2 were just never really designed with that in mind. But hey, maybe people really want that second screen that you can buy, as I am seeing some of these other handheld emulation devices do that with varying results so far. I guess Nintendo could go that route, but let's face it, a grip like this flip grip thing would be much cheaper than having to buy a whole other screen that Nintendo would, I'm sure, try to build up with some kind of marketing lingo for why it costs like $150 or something. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. If the DS came over, would you be willing to give up docked play if that's what would make it even possible in the first place? Or do you have an idea as to how Nintendo could make that work? Maybe with gyro functionality? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.